Hi, it's Martin here with Wintrust Mortgage. So if you're on the market right now looking to buy a house, one of the biggest considerations is how to write an effective offer to not only win the deal, but also bring value to you and make sure that you're getting the best from both the purchase of the house as well as the loan that you're going to take out on this property. This is where myself and your realtor are going to work together as a team to help determine what is the best, not only price point, but terms and best way to negotiate an offer for your house. One of the things that often comes up now is that the market has shifted. A couple years ago, even last year, in the first part of last year, it was not unusual for multiple buyers to bid up the price of a house, and people were asking, they were making offers above asking. Now the market has shifted. It's back to a little bit more of a normalized marketplace where you might be the only person making an offer on a house. And you might be in a position where you could come in a little bit under asking price and maybe get a price reduction. But is that really the best way to approach it? Should you ask for a price reduction, or maybe you should ask for some other form of a seller's contribution to maybe help you with either closing costs or maybe help you in buying down the interest rate? There's a lot of different ways we can craft an offer and draft a document that's going to represent what is in your best interest. And we need to take a look at several different scenarios. So what I'd like to do today is walk you through an example on a $760,000 sales price and show you how that compares to both a price reduction versus other forms of seller's contributions that could be helpful to you. Take a look. Okay, so let's take a look at this model, this example that I have set up on the screen here. And this is based on a purchase price of $760,000. And in this particular example, the buyer was initially asking for a $20,000 price reduction, and the seller came back down offering a $15,000 contribution. And the question is, well, what's the best use of that? Do we want to do a price reduction of $15,000 or do something else with that money? Now, keep in mind that in this example, I've got a $15,000 price reduction shown here in the bottom left of the screen here in red. But the cost of the buy down, whether we do a permanent buy down, is $14,500 or a temporary buy down at $14,500. That was about the same. So you can see it's a $500 difference, not a huge variation, but sometimes you could have a bigger spread between these numbers where maybe you're comparing a $20,000 price reduction versus a $15,000 buy down of points and what have you for the buyer. And the other option that's not shown on the screen here is just a straight out paying of closing costs. You could have the $15,000 applied towards closing costs. It's not illustrated here because that's pretty self-explanatory. It's basically the first column here, which is 30-year fix, except the closing costs are paid for. But let's go through this one by one because I think you'll find this very helpful. And if you need to analyze any of your transactions, let me know because I can run it through this software and look at that for you and your clients, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, because sometimes it's important for the seller to see how they might be able to better attract the buyer by understanding how their dollars can influence the transaction. So the first column here we have is the 30-year fix. That's basically what it would be set up as if we did a $760,000 purchase price, down payment to $152,000. We have an interest rate here of 6.75, and that monthly payment is $39.43. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. Now, if the seller agrees to reduce the price by $15,000, what does that mean to our buyer? Well, instead of doing $152,000 down, they're only doing $149,000 down. It's the same interest rate. The payment is $38.66, where before it was $39.43. So again, that's a pretty good deal. That's a good reduction in the right direction. So a price reduction, there's nothing wrong with that. It's good. But if we're looking at maximizing the use of those funds for our buyer, well, we might want to look at keeping the sales price at $760, and that means our loan amount remains at $608, but getting a lower interest rate by buying down the rate by paying 2 points. That's what a permanent buy down would do. And that means that the monthly payment for this borrower is $36.94. Okay, now that's a lot lower than paying $38.66. So I think this is definitely a good solution. It's probably the best solution right now to look at this. And then we have our fourth and final solution here, which is to do a temporary buy down. So a temporary buy down, we use the seller's funds, the same $14,500, to give a temporary reduction on the interest rate, where the first year's interest rate is not 6.75, but it's actually based at 4.75, and that brings that mortgage payment down to 31.72. When you compare that mortgage payment to all the other mortgage payments on that line, that is the lowest payment, but that's only for 2 years. I would only do this temporary buy down if we believe that mortgage rates are going to be coming down, and coming down to a low enough amount that after 2 years or before the 2 years expires, that the buyer can then refinance their home loan and get the long-term interest rate at a lower payment. Okay, so whether you're looking at buying down permanently or temporary, these two seem to be the best options. Now, if I scroll down here, I can graph this out and show you what happens over a 2-year run. Again, the temporary buy down over 2 years means that the purchaser, the buyer, has spent $103,000, versus if we just did the price reduction, they would have spent $115,000, or a permanent buy down at $111,000. Okay. One thing I want to share with you, which is unique to the temporary buy down, is if the buyer refinances the home before the end of the second year, before their interest rate moves up into the permanent category, the money that's left on the table from that $14,500 that was not spent can be used and applied to do a principal reduction. So in other words, it pays for the refinance of the borrower. So if the borrower was to refinance a year, maybe a year and a half later after buying the house, and let's say there's $4,000 or $5,000 left over from the initial $14,500, we can actually apply that money to cover the cost of their refi in the future. So that's why I'm a big fan of looking at a 2-1 buy down right here, because I believe that if they do a 2-1 buy down, they get into the house at a lower rate, they lock in the sales price. Yeah, the price is at $760,000, but they take the $14,500 to get a lower rate, and then if there's money left over, you use that money to pay for the refi when mortgage rates come back down. And this chart here shows you the green line showing that the 2-1 buy down is the favored and the most economical solution for both buyer and seller. Again, sorry for the long presentation, but I wanted to show you this tool because it's really helpful to identify how we add value to our clients, whether it's a buyer or seller. If you have a transaction that you're going through and you're trying to be creative and trying to find a way to come up with a good offer, give me a call and we can look at these numbers and see what's the best way to go and try to strategize for the optimal solution. All right. Thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.